How you doing, folks? I just want to follow on from what Brendan was talking about earlier on. He mentioned that humans are still quite important and still cool. And what I want to tell you, most of them, what I want to talk to you about is not only are they cool, but we actually need to know how they work as well. That's the really important bit of my talk. So I want to talk about podcasts. Podcasts had a great year in 2018. A lot of commentators are saying they moved from being a niche medium into the mainstream. And what I want to tell you about is how biology is responsible for that, possibly more than anything else. So if you needed a bit more proof about how popular podcasts are, what you're looking at here is Google Trends graphs for searches related to blog and podcasts. What you can clearly see is the red line for podcasts has now overtaken blogs. So more people search for blogs when they're looking for information and entertainment. You can see it's actually probably more pronounced in Ireland than the States, but a lot of places in the world. So we're kind of ahead of the curve at adoption for podcasts. What I'm talking about is dealt with in a TED Talk by this guy, Yuri Hassan. It's a much deeper dive into what I'm going to talk about, so I'd recommend you look at that if you want further information, but I'm going to try and distill it down in about 3.5 minutes. What Yuri talks about is a thing called entrainment. Entrainment is the reaction of your body to an external stimulus. This is the biology bit. The best way of giving you a demonstration of this is physical entrainment, okay? So what I want you to do now is just follow me, okay? Brilliant. Give yourselves a round of applause. No, don't. There you go. No instruction, no direction. You knew what to do, when to do it, and even when I changed it, you followed along with me brilliantly. That's entrainment. That's physical entrainment. Podcasts, what I'm talking about now, the biology behind podcasts, a little bit deeper. Neural entrainment. This is the stuff that happens in your brain, so it's a little harder to digest, but it's the exact same process, your brain reacting to an external stimulus. Quite often, when the neural entrainment happens, it's a response to a story. Okay, so we have this biological reaction when we hear a story. Is it every time someone opens their mouth? Absolutely not. Hassan, when he was doing his experiment, he hooked 5 people up to MRIs and left them in a room. And when they were talking amongst themselves, you could see the brainwaves were all over the place. Then he introduced a 6th person, also hooked up. And when he noticed when that 6th person started telling a story, all the people basically got on the same wavelength. Their brains, the area of the brains, and the time their brains fired all happened in sync. So the key ingredient in this is a thing called oxytocin. So once you start listening to a story and you hear something that creates a stress or a tension in your body in reaction to that story, you start to feel empathy. And you literally place yourself in the middle of that story. You are part of it. You have the same feelings as the speaker, or what you think are the same feelings of the person in the story. And that's the powerful biology behind what happens when you listen to a podcast. So how do we as content marketers and how do you as companies looking to do content marketing capitalize on this? I think the branded podcast is probably the best way to do this. And a good example of this is a show called Breach. It was created by a IT security company called Carbonite. So IT security, pretty technical, maybe boring if you're not into that. So what Carbonite and Spoke Media did when they created Breach was concentrate on the problems that cyber hacks create, the problems, the damage, and then the job you have to pick up the pieces afterwards. They created this. First series was on Yahoo, 3 billion accounts hacked. The second series currently running is on Equifax, where 145 million Americans had personally identifiable information stolen on them. And what they wanted to do with the show was connect with IT decision makers. And I think they probably did that because they were ranked number 2 in the technology sector of the Apple charts. We have started doing podcasts for clients most recently. We're doing the Small Business Show for Virgin Media Business. And what we're trying to do with this show is touch into topics that maybe isn't the core competencies of most small businesses. Like, for example, our first series was human resources. About 70% of SMEs in Ireland don't have any HR function. And you can see there the most popular episode so far is how to deal with tricky staff. So you can imagine the oxytocin levels racing when people were listening to that. Let's be clear, though. You're not going to listen to one podcast episode or one podcast series maybe and start rushing out buying stuff. It's a very much top of the funnel activity, but what you can do is get people to subscribe to your podcast channel. You can build audiences when you distribute your show across social media, and podcasts are becoming increasingly SEO friendly. The Google Podcast app now transcribes podcast episodes in the background for metadata. So they are becoming a really valuable and popular, as you saw at the start, form of medium. So in summary, podcasts are popular, great way of telling a story and connecting with an audience, and so long as you're not boring, biology will do the rest. Thanks a million, folks.